Hi, my name is Lawrence Joss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. And happy Thanksgiving or pre Thanksgiving to everyone out there. And today we're going to have part one of our Thanksgiving conversation. And we're going to have a panel of parents on the show talking about recovery, what the holidays look like now, what the holidays used to look like, some coping strategies, what to do about a plan, and so much more. It's going to be an incredibly rich show. And please make sure to leave us a review. If you're looking at the episode on Apple or Spotify, you just scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there's a place to leave a stars, like 5 stars or whatever feels appropriate to you. There's a place to leave reviews. And this is important just to get the show out there so we can reach more parents and families and kids and other folks that are struggling with this. And please check us out on social media, like, share, do all those different things. And let's get into the show. Man, I used to have a lot of fun with the kids during the holidays. I would do all kinds of silly stuff. And, like I'd buy different socks for everyone, and we'd have relatives and families and friends come over, and everyone would wear different socks, and we'd take all different poses of just different people's feet with the socks on. And one year I did a scavenger hunt. I found some kind of app, and we broke into teams of 2 or 3 because my cousins were over and some people visiting from out of the country. And I always invite random people over that don't have a place to go, and everyone had to traverse around the town to, find a bathtub that they could lie in, or find, some catnip or whatever it was. And on the app you could download if you had completed any of the stuff. So the holidays for me were a really, really, really fun time, and especially with the kids. Like, the kids were a place for me to really express joy and feel joy. And then that shifted, and the family system started to deteriorate, and I didn't have contacts with my kids, and it changed. And I will say, in the change, it was incredibly painful and challenging in the beginning. And as I started to work on myself, and as I started to work on recovery, like, my relationship to the holidays started to change. I started to have a little bit more space to enjoy the holidays. I started to have a little bit more space to enjoy my life. And in having more space to enjoy my life in the holidays, I really feel like, again, I'm parenting without access. I'm letting my kids know that everything's okay, and it's over here one day to share with me. And if not, their reality is wonderful too, and I know they're having a great time too. So let's jump into the interview. This is going to be good, ladies. It's so wonderful to have you back on the show, and I really feel like this is going to be something. I'm not exactly sure what kind of something, but it's definitely going to be something. So I just want the community to get reintroduced to everyone. So, Renee, if you could please go first and just reintroduce yourself to the community, that would be great.
I can. Hi, everybody. My name is Renee. I'm alienated from 2 adult boys in their 30s and 4 grandchildren. And I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this again. So thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you so much for coming out, Renee. And Anna, could you please introduce yourself to the community again?
Sure, Lawrence. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna, alienated mother of a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. I am grateful to have this opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope with the community today. So thank you, Lawrence.
Oh, it's great to have you here again, Anna. And Miss Geo, if you can please go and just reintroduce yourself to everyone and say a hello.
Absolutely. Hi, Lawrence. Hello, everyone. My name is Gio, and I am an alienated mother for my 27-year-old and my 25-year-old, and I have contact with my 21-year-old, and I'm super excited to be back here again. So thank you.
Thanks, Gio. Great to have you here again. And just for anyone out there, my name is Lawrence, and I have 3 adult daughters, and I'm alienated from my 2 oldest ones and have regular contact with my youngest, and have a couple of grandkids. And if you're new to the show, we use the word alienation, and some people will use estrangement or erasure or disconnection. And this is a large tent, and everyone's welcome, and all our experiences count, including the kids, the adult kids, the any form of person that has been alienated, estranged, erased in any direction. All views are welcome. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and all other families. So welcome everyone to the show. We're going to be talking about Thanksgiving today, and I'm going to jump right here into the first question. And the first question is, what is one of your favorite Thanksgiving stories from when you had the kids and possibly the grandkids around? Like, what would that be? And Gio, why don't you go first? What's a favorite story that you have?
I really had to think hard about this because it's been a while since I've had the kids here, and it's amazing how the memories just kind of softly fades away, and I had to really do some thinking. But I would have to say that my favorite memory was when I had my kids and we lived on Cape Cod, um, and it was just a beautiful time in our life. The kids were small, they were excited about the holidays, and just being in New England, celebrating, um, being on the ocean, just being together. Most of our family lived far away, so it was just, uh, the three, actually the five of us. So um, there's a lot of comfort in that memory of just football games, cozy time spent in the house, and just being with one another, playing lots of board games, and just having simple time together.
Mm. Oh, that sounds very beautiful, Gio. Thank you for sharing that memory. And I'm going to go to Anna next. What would you say is one of your favorite memories from Thanksgiving, or because you're in Canada, whatever holiday you do or don't celebrate around the same time?
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, well, Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving, but I grew up in Australia, so it's not part of my family history or tradition. And I mean, I've lived here for a number of decades now, but yeah, it's a difficult question for me to answer. I feel ripples of when it is Thanksgiving here, which it just has been early in October. It touches something in me, but it's not the same as a Christmas memory, just because I don't have that history behind me.
Thank you, Anna, and my apologies to all Canadians. I got confused with Australia and Canada and Thanksgiving, and I know the Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving a week before us. So happy Thanksgiving to all the Canadians out there too. And Renee, what would you say is one of your fondest memories?
I had to think a little bit because it has been a number of decades since I've had my children on any holiday. But one did come to mind just in this moment of when my kids were little. So they would have been like maybe an infant for my youngest, and my older son was about a year and a half. They were only 15 months apart. And I remember being at my parents' house and my mom fixing dinner, and there being, 18, 20 people there, and the kids sitting around playing, and my parents enjoying their grandkids. And my sister's firstborn was the same age as my oldest. So they were all close to the same age. And just really some happy memories of all of us being in the same space at the same time. So I enjoyed thinking back on that.
That sounds very beautiful. I can imagine you sitting there and again, family, closeness, simple times. And one of my favorite memories is painting. So when you walk into my house from the garage, I used to invite the kids to paint on holidays. And if we had family over, I'd have little canvases and everyone would paint on little canvases. So I have a bunch of turkeys in my garage as you walk in, or variations of what a turkey might look like at different stages of evolution. So we'd paint together and then we'd save the paintings, and the next holiday we would paint something else. So it's really nice to see that stuff and comfort in, and it was a really beautiful time. So thank you for sharing your answers on that stuff. So we all have rituals and traditions in our family, and there's certain things that we do with our kids and possibly grandkids. And once that kind of like goes away, like things starts to shift. So I'm curious, have your rituals, traditions shifted with less contact or no contact with the kids? And if so, like what did that look like? And why don't we start with you this time, Renee?
So it's interesting in this question, or in thinking about my answer for this question. I do believe God was kind of preparing me for this, because when my kids were very, very young, I had a job as a police dispatcher. And in that job, you quickly acclimate your thinking to it's just another day. I mean, when you have to work on Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and me being the new kid on the block, I always had to work the holidays. And I had to very quickly shift my thinking to it's not a big deal. We're going to do Christmas later, or, who cares if today's Christmas? And then when my kids went away, I already sort of had that thinking in place. And I found myself using that as a coping mechanism over the years that, you know what, it's just another day. But having said that, I would say in those early years where it was still so painful and so devastating and confusing, I remember hating the holiday. I remember not wanting to do anything. My current husband would cook, but it would just be for us. I didn't want to be with anyone else. I didn't want to go anywhere. And over time, that has changed. But in those early years, it was pretty rough.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So I'm hearing your work kind of like prepared you for it, but it was still really hard and challenging, and it was just you and your husband. And just to piggyback on that same question, like, what does it look like now that you've had some time with the struggle and the evolution of your life and your maturity and stuff? What do the holidays look like now, and how does that feel in contrast to that?
Well, I've had a lot of years to practice. I would say maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I started to decorate again once in a while. Even though there were no kids around, I would put out my fall decorations, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and then, of course, Christmas. Um, as time has gone on, it has become less and less of a struggle. So, in the last 8, 9 years, it really does not create a lot of anxiety in me. I decorate. I know we're going to talk about this later, but I don't really make a lot of plans. Or sometimes I invite people over that I know have nowhere to go. And I know we'll be talking about that later on too. So I've developed some really good coping mechanisms, but there are still times that in the day itself, it may catch me off guard and I'll find myself suddenly feeling kind of depressed or low. But today I have the tools to get out of that fairly quickly.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for that, Renee. And Anna, I know we don't have much Thanksgiving experience, but I would guess around the holidays or ritualistic experiences. What does that look like today, and what did it look like early on when you started just struggling with some of the separation from the kids? So if you can just give us that contrast, that would be wonderful.
So early on, if I think about it, like I'm coming into the 7th year of not celebrating either Thanksgiving or Christmas with any contact with my kids. And it's only coming up for the 7th year that I'm starting to acknowledge the grief around it. Thanksgiving, not such a deal, but I have spent Thanksgiving dinners with friends and bigger groups of people. And if I think about it now, I did it to immerse myself in noise and festivity and company too, but it was really like a buffer to stop me sitting in my feelings. And I felt outside of the group because I wasn't dealing with what was going on for me. So what I want to do differently this year is actually give myself the gift of gently exploring those feelings, which is challenging, but it's also a big part of my recovery. I need to explore that because I've been living in denial, and I can't grow through it. I can't work through it until I start addressing it. So it's going to be an interesting holiday season.
That sounds like that. And taking the time to be kind to yourself and acknowledge the grief and sit with that and actually taking the space to process it sounds like a really wonderful Thanksgiving holiday gift to give to yourself. Yeah, that sounds really sweet. And Gio, how has the absence of your kids around the holidays changed the traditions and rituals, and what does it look like today?
Sure, thanks. So 12 years ago, actually 13 years ago, when I actually was going through my divorce, and the holidays started coming up, I, jumped in trying to make Christmas like it always was, tried to do some of the same traditions. Although I was by myself, I was really trying hard to replicate what I always was doing and failing. So I actually put a lot of undue duress and stress on myself trying to um, show up with this exaggerated excitement for my kids during the holidays. And it wasn't until I started really coming into my recovery and having a more conscious awareness, I was able to look back and understand. I was, even with the holidays, they were physically telling me they didn't want it. And I was putting myself through so much to try to replicate it. And since I've been in a place of sort of like this post-traumatic growth with working on myself, getting the help I need, being in the parental alienation fellowship, I I have more relief now. I when it comes to the holidays because I don't force myself to be the everything to everyone, to try to make the perfect meal, set everything up so we're all together and it's this phony sense of joy and happiness. And uh, I have so much more peace. I don't worry about it. I do struggle with um, sort of as the seasons change and it gets close to the holiday seasons, my body does sort of switch into a mode where I'm highly aware what's coming 3 months down the road. So I do have to I'm able to intercept some of that anxiety early on as I make my plans for the holiday, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, and that's a great point to kind of like touch on, like the anxiety kind of like build up as you start getting close to the holiday seasons, and you see certain things in your neighborhood or in town that are starting to remind you of the holidays. It can definitely overwhelm the nervous system, and just kind of like tying into the answer on that question, like you briefly mentioned Parental Alienation Anonymous, which is a 12-step support group. It's free and available to anyone if you're interested. And then other people pick other support groups or communities or family or whatever supports them. But I'm just curious, like, what does support from your community feel like during the holiday? Like, and when I say that, like this anxiety, this loneliness, this lack of rituals, the lack of the physical proximity of the kids is can be devastating and all encompassing. And then you add this layer of recovery and community on top of it. Does that transform it in any kind of way? And let's start with you, Anna.
It does transform it for me, Lawrence, in the sense that I've got safe people that I can be my authentic self with during the holidays. So if I feel like sharing a tradition or a happy memory, someone's there for me. If I call them up, if I do FaceTime with them and I've got tears streaming down my face, they'll hold space for me. So it's a way to for me to acknowledge my feelings, which is such a huge part of my recovery because I spent so long stifling them and pushing them down. That's a gift, and I couldn't do that without the community because it's only the people in the community, from my perspective, that really understand the pain and how sharp it is in the holidays when everything is family, family, family. It's sometimes, again, just the idea that I can do that, even if I can't reach someone, it allows me to do my own grief process or my own, wow, I heard that song on the radio. I remember dancing around with my kids to that. So it allows me to be authentic, which is huge.
So just to reflect back to you, I'm hearing that you feel court by the community, that you feel held and seen by the community, which is really, really important because this is so isolating and crazy making, and our families of origin can't show up. At least I will say my family of origin can't fully show up for me because they're in their own grief, their own denial, their own coping mechanisms. So I'm hearing you feel court by the community. Is that pretty accurate, Anna?
That's a great way to describe it, Lawrence. They allow me to show up as I am, as my authentic self, and that's huge.
Okay, and I just want to add one other reflection on top of that, which is so incredibly important for me, is a shared reality, right? Like I can be at the grocery store talking to someone or bumping into a close friend and having a conversation, but I do not have a shared reality. Being a separated, alienated, estranged parent, grandparent, or even a child that's coming up in the other direction, like having a shared reality is like, my shoulders go down. Someone actually understands what I'm saying. And I'm hearing you express that too, Anna, right?
Yes, that's right. That's a great reflection. I have many, many moments of in program of really enjoying that, because it allows me to have compassion for myself where I feel like I've made mistakes or I could have done things differently. When I can be my authentic self, not only do I get to grieve, I also get to celebrate with the people in the community, and that's awesome.
Hmm. I love that. And as Anna's saying that, I got goosebumps, right? And there's a word called attunement that we talk about sometimes. And attunement is when you're actually able to see someone and they're able to see you, and you kind of like drop in a little bit. And that's what shared experience kind of gives you. Like you're actually met where you are, and it becomes this real deep conversation, and you can feel it viscerally in your body if you really pay attention. So, Renee, I'm gonna move on to you with the same question. How has recovery colored your holidays and your resiliency, resources, and anything like that that you'd like to talk to?
Oh my gosh, recovery has changed everything for me. I was thinking while Anna was sharing, when I went through this all those years ago, I had no support of any kind. We didn't have Facebook, we didn't have the FaceTime or Zoom or any of that. So I felt so isolated and alone. And then to have my family of origin ask me about the kids for a while, but then after several years, just give up. And now, more recently, my children are never talked about. They are never invited to even major events in my family. Um, what recovery has done is exactly what you said, Lawrence, is it's giving me a shared reality. The very first meeting I went to, I immediately felt exactly what you're talking about. It's like all the shame and guilt and not being heard and not being understood just kind of melted off of me. It happened so quickly for me. It felt like some kind of a spiritual awakening, if you will. And that was at my very first meeting. And when I look back and I try to encapsulate everything that I've learned from this program in terms of having the coping skills to deal with the holidays and interactions with people and the whole shared reality thing, um, it has completely changed my life. I mean, every reaction, every situation is more mature. It is less dramatic. It's less emotional for me. Um, and I'm sure that we'll talk about it at some point. But finally, today, I can appreciate when other people are enjoying the holiday with their family. I can appreciate when somebody's cute little kid is leaning over the booth behind me in a restaurant and giggling. I can turn around and say, well, hi, how's it going? There were years where I was like, there were even times that I would move to another booth because I was like, I do not want this. I don't like kids. Get away from me. So it truly has transformed every interaction in my world through the lens of recovery through PAA.
I love your recovery reflection, and I relate like early on, like a little kid smiling and having a good time, and I'm like, hey, no one's allowed to have a good time around me. Stop it. So I totally relate to it, and it's a human experience, and for anyone out there that's new to this, like an analogy that someone shared with me one time, it's like opening a window when it's really windy outside, and you can open up the window a little bit and then it slams shut, and then the next time you can open it and it stays open a little bit longer, and as you go along through recovery, you are actually able to open the window to an extent that you want, and then when you're done, you can close the window. But early on, it just keeps shutting closed really, really quickly. And you touched on so many great points, Renee, but I want to just circle back to one of the ones you touched on, which I think is a really important thing around the holidays, is our families. I'll speak for myself. My family emotionally cuts off from my kids, and it happened gradually. It didn't happen on the first holidays, but they're not included. Like we've moved on, like their emotional capacity to hold that with me is not there. And you had mentioned like your family over a period of time doesn't include the kids or anything like that anymore. And just as like a mom and a grandmother, how does that part make you feel, like the family kind of dealing with their grief in this kind of way of erasing in their own kind of way, like the kids. How does that make you feel?
Initially it was difficult, but it's important that I say that I completely understand my family's reaction, because they did reach out initially. I mean, they would ask and they would get excited when I would say, "Hey, I've got their phone number, here it is," or "I've got their address, here it is." And they would get excited and they would reach out to my kids only to feel like they were being slapped in the face, because either my kids wouldn't respond or they would say, "Stop emailing me, Grandma, leave me alone," or whatever. And after about 4 or 5 years of that, anybody would kind of start to shut down. For a number of years, it bothered me that it was never even an option for my kids to go to cousins' weddings or grandparents' birthdays, milestone birthdays or whatever. But the truth is, I planned parties for my parents at their milestone birthdays, and I never invited my own children because I was in that protective mode. I knew that they weren't going to come. So why would I set myself up to fail? And now, more recently, it bothers me less and less. The only thing that recently happened around this topic was I did hear from my kids in the last 7 or 8 months, as some of you know, and I was so excited about that, but I didn't share it with my family of origin for several months. And when I did finally share it in a group, we were in town for a wedding together. And when I did say in a group of my family, "Hey, by the way, I heard from my children and I may be even seeing one of them," it was as if I said nothing at all. No one seemed interested. Nobody said a word. And that did bother me, because for me to be excited about this and not give up on my kids, but to see my family making it very clear that they were over it, they don't care, they're off the roller coaster. That was hard.
Wow. Yes, no, I felt that in my body, like just wanting support and some love in a really challenging situation, and no one was able to show up. Yeah, that does sound hurtful, and I appreciated you circling back and saying your family did the best that they could, and that they reached out and they made an effort until they didn't, because it's important to acknowledge that when we share our point of views, no one's right, no one's wrong. We're sharing a point of view from a specific perspective, and we need to call in all the other perspectives because we're all struggling with so many different moving parts, and I don't believe anyone's right or wrong. We're trying to survive. So Gio, just circling back to the original question, recovery, what does that look like? How does it change the frame of your holidays?
The beauty came when I got into recovery. Recovery for me was an opportunity to do a lot of heavy grief work that it was from way long time ago, that I brought into my family, and my kids were a part of that. Uh, that intergenerational Christmases were stressful when I was a kid, so as I, going back to the recovery piece of it, when I finally started uh, with the program, I was able to get real with myself. I was ready to get real with myself. It took me 13 years to get to a place where I felt safe. There were people amongst me that also shared the same feelings. It gave me sort of at the time a right to just be like, yeah, and it just almost allows that grief to just flush out of your body, out the bottom of your feet, is how it felt like as I kept coming back. And I was able to have um, a more conscious awareness of what I was bringing to the table myself during the holidays, before I started a recovery program. I was actually contributing to my kids' stress because I was already stressed. It just was an automatic. And so they didn't want to be here all these years. It was very evident. I could see it wasn't until I started getting healthier and looking at what I was bringing to the table that I was able to step back and, like, inside of my head, take a look at when my kids would come to the house for the holiday. The first thing they would do is, and rightfully, I understand why, they would come in, they'd get on a chair, they'd crawl up and want to sleep. They didn't want to engage. I finally get that was their way of dealing with they were dysregulated. Um, so I couldn't see that. I couldn't see that till I got into the rooms of and started working on me and getting things, sifting through that garbage I had carried all these years. And though they have not, this will be the second Thanksgiving that my older two kids will not be with me. I do have relief. I have relief more so for them than myself. I'm just in a place of peace. Of course, the doors would be open if they decided to show up, and they were in a place of healing and working through the things that they carry. So yes, there's a lot of relief with working on myself and getting the garbage out that I needed to get out of myself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joe. And I really appreciate how insightful it is when you talk about recovery and you start to change. And then you notice like how you're perpetuating the anxiety and you're adding to the tension that's there. And the kids are in this place where they need to check out by sleeping or getting on their devices, whatever it is. And it's an interesting juxtaposition because they're doing this on both sides. They're doing it at both families where they're trying to navigate each parent's emotional ecosystem. So to point that up is a great addition to the conversation, Gio. And I just want to acknowledge to everyone out there that this is an intense conversation. And a lot of the subject matter that we cover is really real and authentic and intense. So I'm just gonna welcome everyone just to take a breath. And when you take a breath, just try breathe into your belly and through your nose, and then you can let it out through your mouth. And this just initiates your nervous system to kind of start to relax. If you're breathing into your chest, it's more of like an up regulatory breath, and into your belly is kind of like and you just feel your shoulders relax and let go. And we're going to welcome you to breathe as often as possible during our conversations, and we're going to start to talk about that a little bit. And just to share from me and my experience in recovery is I came to recovery isolated, alone. I didn't know anyone. The holidays sucked. I spent it with my family and still had a really good time. But the real beautiful part about the holidays is there was always meetings on the holidays for me to go to. There was always other people that was struggling during the holidays that I had a shared reality to, that I could pick up a telephone, that I could connect with. And I saw people that were actual strangers love each other. Like my own family doesn't necessarily like each other all the time, but two complete strangers that meet in a random place at a random time show up and love each other and walk each other through a really challenging time. And it's such a beautiful thing about recovery. And you hear people talk about the music of recovery, and the music of recovery is just seeing these relationships kind of form, and they might not last forever, or they might last forever, but they're just like a really magical little part. Oh wow, that's a lot of stuff we covered in a short period of time. So we're going to step into like a challenging question here, and when I put this question together, I haven't even thought of what the answer is. So I'm going to read it to everyone, and then we'll take a breath, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm inviting everyone to take a moment and reflect on the other side of the experience. And we touched on that a little bit in the question when Gio was just answering it. How do you think your kids or grandkids manage and feel during the holidays? So this includes like in early days when we have an expectation for them to come over and be happy and engage with the rest of the family and stuff like this. And this also includes like as they go through their evolution of growth and maturity and developing their brain fully, and then critical thinking. Like they have different iterations of what the holidays mean to them. So I just want to take a little bit of time to kind of like, what do you think that they're experiencing? Wow. 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 Let's just take a breath together again. Just taking a deep breath in through the nose and into your belly. Feel your belly kind of like extend, and then Let it out through your mouth. That was a lot. That was a lot of incredible, incredible stuff from three beautifully incredible people, and really important part of my community. And if you're new to the program, there's some wonderful resources during the holidays. Parental Alienation Anonymous. There's 14 meetings a week, and maybe more by the time this comes out. There's 14 meetings a week. There's all kinds of resources on the website. There's the Hope Project. Like if you're lonely or not lonely during the holidays, and you're feeling creative or not creative, start submitting some art projects. The website's just about to go up, and the stuff is powerful, moving, visceral. Check in the show notes. You can click on a lead magnet, which will show you some different submissions and stuff. And it's a place you can submit some art or send us an email and ask some questions. And then there's the podcast. We want to hear from you. Around the holidays, what questions do you have? What are you struggling with? What do you want us to talk about? Who do you want us to interview? And please share, no matter what format. If it's on Instagram, if it's on YouTube, like the more engagement we have, the more folks you share with, the more people we're going to be able to reach. And initially, you would think the show is for parents and grandparents, but the show is for parents and grandparents. It's for kids that are struggling too. And their perspective and vision is incredibly important. And we're going to have some great shows coming up where we're interviewing some kids that have been alienated and estranged. And we also take in their full life cycle of what that feels like to them. And there's also the foundational trainings, which will be launching after the first of the year: nonviolent communication, meditation, the work by Byron Katie, family system constellations, family systems theory, just so many cool things that are going to help you build resiliency and resources. Because the thing more important than the attorney, than the therapist, than all these other things is building some internal resourcing. And I'm not saying don't go to the professionals. I'm saying having community and people you can reach out to in a second is really important versus scheduling a therapy session 2 weeks away. Like, we need to have resources in between that. So thank you for a great show. Thanks for coming out and supporting the community. I hope it was fun, informative, challenging, real, and all those things in between. And let us know what you're thinking. And lastly, in the show notes, there's a link to the podcast crew. Do you want to participate in some of the formation of what we're doing in the podcast? Do you want to submit some videos and stuff? And we're going to send you out all the processes and everything and how to do that if you're interested. So from me to you, happy holidays, happy turkey days. I hope you have a wonderful time. Anyone that's watching some video, this is my turkey or rooster or something like that. And we're just going to say, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo. Bye.